Thank you, Rich, and thank you everybody for joining today. I'm really excited to show you something which I find to be, to be honest, an underused portion of the Elastic stack. At least I don't see very much use out of it. Everybody's always talking about, oh, look at these cool new graphs that we can make, or look at these, look at Lens, how cool it is. And while those features are really fantastic and they do work really, really well, I really like Canvas. Not just because it does all of the same kind of stuff that you can do with manipulating your data, presenting it, all that, but because I also like graphic design. That's a bit of a side hobby. I like doing those infographic resumes, and I've done that for friends. And I've been known as the logo guy at work. Whenever a new team spins up and they want to have a team logo, I've had people come knocking on my door. So Canvas allows me to be more creative than pretty much any other data presentation platform I've ever played with before, and that's why I like it. That's why I'd like to give you a talk about it today. So let's go ahead. My name is Andreas Helmer. Currently, I'm a product owner at Agfa Healthcare, and as I mentioned earlier, I take care of the platform initiative side, where we are looking into Elastic and developing with it in order to create some really cool solutions. Other than that, on a personal side, I'm what I consider myself to be a diabetes geek. I have type 1 diabetes, and at the end, I'll share you my link of some previous talks that I've given and a blog article that are about how I'm using the Elastic Stack to make a personal I'll rephrase that, how I'm making my personal life a little bit better, and corroborating all the different pieces of data that I generate, like from my Apple Watch, from my sensor, from my insulin pump, and putting it all together. I'm a huge Star Wars geek, and home networking and automation, along with being a new dad. My daughter is turning 1 next week, if I remember correctly. So I'm very excited to have a toddler running around. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's about me. But let's talk about the good stuff. So today, as I mentioned, I want to go over why I like Canvas a little bit more, what I don't like about it, what I really do like about it, and show you some different dashboard examples of what I've done with Canvas. Now, not all of these are the prettiest, but they get the message across. So I hope that I can show you at least some of what I like to do with it. But why do I like Canvas? Well, number one is the customization. As I mentioned, being an amateur graphic design toddler, I do like to have control over the different styles of the way my dashboards look like, the choosing color accents, and choosing different backgrounds and text and stuff like that. So that's really why I like the Canvas, because it gives me a lot of control. It also allows me to show live data inside of a dashboard. So I had one instance where I put up during an escalation, I created an Elastic dashboard and put it up on a separate monitor, and I just had that refresh Canvas constantly while showing different things, and I made a button go big and red when there was a problem that came up. So it caught my eye right away, and I didn't have to wait for emails or anything like that to pop in. It visually appeared right there, which I thought was really, really cool. Also, I come from an Oracle SQL background, and Canvas has a SQL built right into it, or a very, very similar language to SQL, which I really like. It made my transition from Oracle stuff, even though I use Oracle still a lot now, to thinking about Elastic a lot easier, because I don't know about you guys, but I can't read DSL very well yet. Even though I've taken both Elastic Engineer 1 and 2, done a bunch of other courses, my DSL foo sucks. Yeah, so that's something I gotta work more on. But oh, and did I mention customization? In case I didn't. Like I said, that's the number one thing of why I like Canvas, because we can do really cool things. Like we can add company logos right to the middle of our presentations. We can add random shapes. We can add family photos. We can even add memes in the middle of our Canvas document, which I think, one, it lightens up the data you're trying to present, but you can also make it look a lot more clean and finished and professional and personalized, which can be very important, especially if you have a use case where you're creating a dashboard for a customer, and they want to know like what their KPI uptimes are. Then you can generate a nice graphical interface for them, have their logo in the top, use their colors, and just at the same time keeping the back end all the same with all the Elastic stuff that a lot of us are familiar with. So that's what I would like mostly about it. And we can also do live updates. So here's an example of some unit sales in a nice simple dashboard. And this is where I'm going to spoil the surprise, because in case you haven't noticed already, I'm actually using Canvas to do this presentation. So yes, everything you've seen so far has been all in Canvas, every single one of these. So this right here is a Canvas dashboard, and I have an element here which is just a nice histogram. And what I can do with it is I can update the data immediately and add more things. So if I go here on my side screen, I'm updating the indexes directly, and I go and refresh the data. Hopefully it doesn't crash. Yes. And now, bang, now there's more data that's been updated. And all I did was add another document to this particular index. I can, if I wanted to, I could also set the refresh settings so that this could have popped up automatically. But ultimately, it still looks nice. It still looks the same, and it updated dynamically and cleanly. That's, like I said, one of the biggest things that I really want to see from Elastic Canvas. So to me, this was the greatest thing. The first time I saw a Canvas presentation was from was a real Elastic webinar hosted by Elastic, and the gentleman went to the very end of the presentation, and then he did what I just did, and it blew my mind because I wouldn't have been able to tell that he was using the PowerPoint software or Canvas software. And in case you haven't noticed, I also duplicated the same PowerPoint theme and style from the Elastic Community Conference. So this was from a template, and I grabbed the exact same background color that was used from that. These are the exact same images, and it all looks nice and neat and the same, which I think is the most important thing when it comes to Elastic. So I'm going to hide the controls again, and let's go back to full screen mode. So now the big surprise is out of the way. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other stuff. Oops, refresh rate. Go away. There we go. All right. So the other thing I talked about was SQL. To me, I can read this statement and understand exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get everything from this particular table, or in our case, index, and order it by a particular column, and I only want the top 3 documents. This makes sense to me. And it just reads really nicely in one line. And that's part of the reason why Canvas was such a big appeal to me when I first got started, because it took language that I already understood and knew and continued, and I can continue using it. And then there's this way. This is the exact same thing. So all I did was take this SQL statement and I pumped it into the Translate API and added the search DSL at the very top. But this right here is all the exact same stuff. And I know a lot of people really like DSL, but to me, this might as well be speaking Spanish. I mean, I can speak German quite well, but I cannot speak DSL quite this well yet. So, and this is probably even a really simple statement. So it's something, like I said, I got to learn more of. But at the end of the day, this makes still way more sense to me than this does right now. And maybe I'm taking the easy way out. I don't know, but it works. So that's both of something that I do not that I do like, and DSL which I do not like. But in general, I also want to talk about some of the things that I really dislike about Canvas. When I was making this presentation, and what I'm using here is just an Elastic Cloud account. Oh, it's not showing the URL. That's okay. It's just as a very small instance of the Elastic Cloud account that's available. It's costing me $20 a month, but it does everything that I needed to do, as long as I keep my Canvas presentations small, because it can be an incredibly memory hog, and then sometimes just data doesn't appear, and it can make editing and creating presentations like this incredibly frustrating. So my biggest piece of advice is, if you want to do a big presentation like this, one, temporarily upgrade your cloud account so that it has more memory, like I did, or do this on an instance where you can instantly give it a lot more memory and processing power, just because it makes everything a lot quicker, snappier, and easier to use. I lost count of how many times I had the red error box pop up in the bottom right-hand corner telling me that, oh, this query is too big, or index not available, or shards are offline. And that's because the Elastic Cloud instance was almost constantly restarting itself in the background. So, and that's because it didn't have very much power, but I did go and, like I said, upgrade my account, and everything was working relatively well since then. Furthermore, the visualizations are a little bit on the basic side. So going back to the little sales diagram, it's both a good thing and a bad thing. One, like, you can't really add lines. It's hard to add, you can't really stack the graphs or anything like that. But you do get a nice simple layout, which looks nice and clean, which in my opinion is still probably the most important thing. But if you're looking for more advanced things, of course you can now import the Kibana visualizations as well, which are really, really cool. And I'll show that a little bit later on. But then you have like a Kibana visualization window in the middle of your canvas, which is okay if that's what you need. I also found the debugging tools to be sometimes a little bit lacking. Like, yeah, I told you about the little pop-up box, which is sometimes a little bit cryptic. And actually, I wanted to show you an example of an error that I was getting. So here, edit, show it in controls. Okay. So this little box right here, I set this up on purpose, is just a measurement box where I'm trying to grab the mean millimoles per liter from my CGM, my blood glucose data. And the reason why I'm wanting to do that, first I just wanted to grab all of the data, and that worked. Save, but see, nothing was popping up. So then it says the expression must return a single number. Try wrapping your expression in mean or sum. Okay, let's go add mean function. Save that. Oh, there, exception problem not found. Function mean. So even though the last error message told me to use the mean function, there's no such thing as a mean function. So that's a little strange. But then I eventually figured out that, well, I know what the issue is. I can just add a limit to the amount of data that's being returned, and then everything is okay. So if I go this limit 1, save, then it should pop up. Oh no, get rid of the mean, because the mean is not a real function. And then I get an actual value. So that was just a bit of a pain, but eventually, if you do play around with it, you can get it to work. And finally, one pro tip that I have to give is time filters. Because this is not really PowerPoint, each one, or it's kind of like PowerPoint, but because this is all still one workpad, if you add a time filter to one panel, that time filter is going to apply to all of the other panels, which is a bit of a pain. So if you do have to use time filters, be very careful that the time filter you're setting on one panel isn't going to negatively impact another panel. I know generally you want to look at the same range of data and the same range of time, but sometimes if you want to contrast multiple panels and have different time ranges, I found that to not work as well. So that's just another thing to be on the lookout for. Now, for some of the things that I do really like I mentioned before. Here, let me hide this, go back to full screen. Is the biggest thing for me was being creative, and that this is a big one. As I mentioned before, it's so important that I can be creative with all of the different data that's available. And same thing with having access to the live data, which I showed you earlier as well. It's so incredibly important to have the right information at the right time, especially for some of the use cases that I've been using it for, like is a blood glucose monitor. I had before my little iPad died, I had an iPad sitting on my desk, and I had a dashboard up on it where it would constantly refresh and show me my blood glucose information that was coming from my glucose monitor, along with some other information like what my A1C is, which is like an average of a longer range of blood glucose, what I'd eaten that day, and I saw it all on one graph, all pop up. So that kind of information is really vital for me to have on a personal basis. Now, of course, I can always go look at my insulin pump for some information. I can go look at my phone for other information. But to have that all in a single place is what made it really valuable. I already talked about SQL and what's great about it, so I won't reiterate that. And then some of the little things, like object snapping. So in case you don't know what I mean, let me go back to editing. So as I hover over each of the different elements, you can see the boxes that pop up. And when I drag these elements around, you can see the snapping that appears. So here's the purple lines that appear. And this is, to me, really important when you want to make things look nice. And so you know where borders are from one object to another. And it really helps just line things up and make things really nice. Oops, I hit Control Z. Another pro tip, be careful with Control Z because it refreshes the entire dashboard. And that's another good way to crash a really small cluster with Canvas. So that was really important. And down here, this was another little example of some live data that I had going. So this is just a line. I removed the x-axis and the y-axis. Turn those back on, of my blood glucose data. So it's running a little high at the moment. So this is in millimoles per liter. Multiply that by 18 to turn it into the what the standard that most U.S. hospitals use. So yeah, I'm probably around 170, 180, but that's perfectly okay for me. I blame it on presentation stress, which is fine. My insulin pump should take care of me. So, but at the end of the day, I can line it up and snap it to wherever I need this to go. So that's really important to me. All right, and then, oh, you know what? We'll just stay here instead of keeping going back and forth. Then this is an example of a dashboard that one of the first dashboards that I had created for a customer incident. It wasn't too much of an incident. It was more of my boss wanting to know how we can get live data visualized in one way. So the thing on the left here is an example of what he gave me. He said, okay, I want to know all the priority 1 incidents. I want to know all the priority 2 incidents, how many there were, and how many days they were in that bucket for, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I said, okay, sure. He gave me the raw data from, we used ServiceNow, and I mocked up this sample thing here on the right-hand side, which then I've got him pretty much all the information he was asking for in a very similar looking format. So this, as I said, this was one of my first cracks at doing a Canvas dashboard with some data in it, and I think it worked out really, really well, because now we were able to feed live data into the Elasticsearch database, and he could go and look up his KPIs for the various incidents that were logged. So I thought that was a really good use case for Canvas, because especially for as you move higher up the food chain, I should say, and technical ability doesn't always stick around that often. And I know I might be generalizing a bit here, but I'm technically a manager now, so I can say it. And you know what? Me personally, it sucks, because I want to stay technical and I want to see up to date, but I need to also know this kind of information on a regular basis too. So I have to look at averages of various KPIs for our development efforts. And so while dashboards tend to disseminate the information a little bit, I think they're important to have too. All right, moving on. And then here is an example dashboard of something very similar that I had on my little iPad that I was talking about before. And here is the example of the Kibana or Kibana visualization that I had imported. So here I have full control over when I want to see the data for. So if I say last 24 hours, actually that won't be very much, because I just restarted the logs dash. My server died, so I just restarted that a couple hours ago. So if I refresh that, I can go now look last couple of hours, see how my blood sugar has been trending. I can see what I've been eating over the last couple of months, and carbs, what my average bolus information is. A bolus is taking a shot of insulin in insulin pump terms, and I can see how much insulin is left inside of my pump. So this kind of information is very, very useful for my personal use case, and I can have this up on a screen and view it at any time of the day that I want. So to me, doing this kind of stuff is incredibly important, and I like that it all looks clean and in a single instance. And I do want to talk about real quick. Oops, need to show the editing controls again. About something that was a little tricky at first when I started playing around with the image reveal option. So with the image reveal option, you do two things. You need to define what an image looks like when it's completely full or at max, and you need to define what an image looks like at minimum. And then the image reveal just kind of fades it, the full one down. So if you ever want to do this kind of effect, you do have to create two separate images and then import those. That took me a while to figure out. I'm embarrassed to admit. But anyway, I just another little pro tip to hand out, because it's something I didn't initially realize. And then there's other cool things. So this is something that I want to really do as well. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I'm a big home networking and home automation guy as well. I have Home Assistant running my house. I have Ubiquity hardware running everywhere. And one day I also want to build a lac rack like this person had. This is not my setup. Mine, it looks much worse. It's pretty much hanging on the wall in the basement, so I won't embarrass myself by showing that. But this is the kind of thing that I want to do as well. I want to be able to show vital stats information for my various network components, whether I get the data using, I guess, an NMP protocol, or using, there's a cool GitHub project called a Unify Polar, which can be used to gather this information and then store it inside Elasticsearch, and then to take a picture of it and then see a live image of the various components that are available here, and have live graphs down at the bottom that show what kind of rates are going through my system. And I know especially the Unified Controller dashboard does a lot of this stuff for me already. But once again, I like to be able to control this information how I want it, when I want, how I want to display it, etc. And that's why I like Canvas. And maybe even I'll put like my blood glucose in the top right-hand corner, just so I have another spot to look at it, just because it is that important to me. So I thought this was a neat use case as well to do at home. All right, keep going. I'm running a little fast. Oh, well, that's okay. So a few tips to keep in mind when you want to go and create a Canvas dashboard is: one, keep the Markdown guide handy. This is a Markdown cheat, which I shouldn't have clicked on that. Maybe I'll get lucky and go back. But because all of the text blocks are done with a Markdown, if you're familiar with GitHub or any text interface like that, then this will be very familiar to you in terms of how to write different documentation inside Elastic Canvas as well. Now let's hope, go back, and my Canvas will load. For the record, I wanted to click the mouse wheel on my mouse to bring this up in a new tab, but my finger slipped. Zoom, fit to window. Yes. All right, good. Back in business. And so keep that handy. And as I already mentioned, don't use the minimal Elastic Cloud specs. It crashed hard today. As I was updating the last few slides on this presentation today, my Elastic instance crashed so bad that eventually I logged into my cloud instance that said 176 shards are unavailable. Oh no, and I had to force a restart of the entire cluster, and just hopefully that it came back and that it worked. I did have this all downloaded as a backup as well, but I didn't have all the indexes in my local Elastic cluster set up, so I would have had to regenerate some of this data, which I just didn't want to do. But luckily, it's still going. And when it comes to these dashboards, I know I should have touched up on this earlier, is we have to try and tell a story with the information that you want to tell. Just like I told a story about how my blood glucose and my day is going, or how I'm telling, or how my boss wanted to tell a story about the different incident levels in the KPIs. That's what this is for, is to create really graphical, pretty representative dashboards of your data, which I think is fantastic. And you can keep them as simple or as complex as you want, but because of the nature of this style of presentation, it's best to keep it as simple as possible. So in terms of what's next for me is, as I mentioned, I'm a huge fan of Home Assistant, and there are some really, really cool things that you can do with the expressions that are available in some of the advanced features in Canvas, which some of the tutorials go through, but I just want to quickly see if I can touch up on one of them. I think, was it in here? Shoot, I don't remember. Let's see. The expression editor down here. No, I didn't save it. Darn. But this expression language here is very compatible with JavaScript and Node.js. So you can do stuff like here, like if you, click on a particular image, you can have a web call go out to a particular REST endpoint or something and have it do something. During the Elastic conference, I saw a gentleman do a presentation of how he integrated his dashboard with his Home Assistant, and then when he went and he tapped on a light bulb that was shown in a layout of his house and inside Canvas, that light bulb went and turned off. I thought that was really, really cool. And so that's the kind of stuff that I want to do as well and play around with it, including doing conditionals. So if the light bulb is turned off, then change the picture completely, or if it's pink, change it to pink. So there's lots of really cool things and lots of really advanced features, which I haven't touched up too much yet, but that's the kind of stuff that I want to get into as well. And I think I've really just brushed the surface of what Canvas is able to do. So yeah, if you have any further questions about use cases, what I've done, feel free to message me I'm on Slack community as well. And make sure you check out my Elastic community conference talk about how I'm using my type 1 diabetes and data inside Elasticsearch as well. So, and there I'm also showing the entire presentation in Canvas too. So it's done really well. Last but not least, because I didn't want to ruin the surprise, I did want to say that a lot of the content that I did show you today comes straight out of another Elasticsearch index. So here I have an index called Canvas Presentation, and there I indexed some fields called name, company, and title, and I indexed that data in here as well, and I indexed all my different hobbies inside of a nested object, and I can show it up in here. So you can do really cool stuff. And my type 1 diabetes presentation I did it the same way. It's pretty much all done inside of an index, just because I'm crazy. And that's it. That's all I got. And I know I'm a little bit early, but feel free to reach out to me like I said, on Slack. You can reach me on LinkedIn as well. I'm on Twitter. I don't use it very much. But that's it. That's all I got for you today.
Thanks, Andreas.